Video games.
What up, dudes? Welcome back to another YoVideogames review, and this time I am reviewing the mother of all quirky mother games, and that's Mother 3 for the GBA. Yeah, this has been a sort of, I guess, a long time coming. It's always been that weird character in Smash Brothers, for me all my life, where Ness, he's a thing, and Brawl came out, and then there's Lucas, who's blonde Ness, and it was just kind of like, I don't really know anything about these games. I don't really know, I know they're obviously very well regarded, well liked, but yeah, I never dived into them. I've multiple times throughout the last 20 odd years, more than 20 years of my life, I've played maybe the first hour or less of Earthbound. I borrowed Earthbound from a friend once, many years ago. Didn't really play it too long, didn't get into it because the other game I borrowed was Super Metroid, and yeah, I kind of got a lot more into that. So yeah, I just never really got into these games too much. But yeah, they're a very obviously quirky is of course like the de facto explanation for them, and they've gone on to influence a lot of other bigger successful games, obviously Undertale, Deltarune, all that stuff. But yeah, like I never sat down and played any of the games that were influenced really by it, nor the original. So the understanding I always had was Mother 3 was the best one, or at least one of the most standout entries. Like they're all good, but like Mother 3 is probably the most refined, I guess you could say. So I jumped into this one and I played it. Now, as we all know, the elephant in the room, it's the only game to never get released in North America. It's the only one that didn't get a translation. Earthbound Beginnings and Earthbound, proper, which is Mother 1 and Mother 2 respectively, did and are available on the NSO right now, but Mother 3 in North America and Europe is not playable. So I had to go through a fan translation for this one, which is unfortunate, but also, hey, that's just the kind of the world we live in right now. But yeah, how do I feel about Mother 3, having finally got to experience the game properly, and it's pretty good. I mean, the thing that struck me most about this was how similar, not other games were, but how similar everything about this game felt to Adventure Time, where it has a very intentionally simplistic art style and graphical design. And it's got this sort of air of, it's sort of like this cutesy, whimsical, childlike thing, but there's much deeper, heavier stuff going on in the background there. So yeah, this game, in a sense, I would be completely unsurprised to learn if Earthbound ever had any effect on the writing and the creation in Adventure Time, because they feel so similar in a lot of respects. But yeah, let's just dive right in. I already started with the graphics there. They're very simplistic. They're simplistic to a point and simplistic for a purpose. Earthbound 1 might be the only game that was like close to the limit of what an NES on its own could do. Earthbound was nowhere near the most graphically impressive Super NES game. It wasn't even close. And Mother 3 is not doing anything special with the Game Boy Advance. It is hyper simplistic, but hyper, designed that way, like hyper focused to be that way. So yeah, it's not going to win any awards for that. The music, on the other hand, super funky, super unique, but also uses samples from famous, very famous pop songs, pop and jazz and what have you songs throughout the entire last century. So this became a bit of a nightmare, actually trying to put it where into the second episode, I was trying to upload my playthrough onto YouTube, and I was getting dinged multiple times for one of the characters' themes. So I kind of realized, like, this game is actually kind of a DMCA nightmare when it comes to music. And then when I just kind of let that go, I'm like, all right, I'm just going to stream it. I'm just going to play it. This is how it is. It was more enjoyable because I would hear little riffs and beats and samples, and I'd be like, that's a Beatles song, and not one of the most super popular ones either, but like that's definitely a Beatles song. So like you might recognize things The Batman theme, of course, everyone knows from one of the first enemies you fight in the game for the 60s Batman stuff. So, yeah, there's just some interesting, fun music. Shogo Sakai, famous for his Smash Brothers and Kirby Air Rider music. He's definitely like a great composer, but it is kind of one of those things where it's like they're riffing on riffs of a lot of classic mid-century, especially music. So very unique in that sense. And the other thing I definitely want to point out is that, say if you're new to this game like me, there's a metric ton of different battle themes. This game has an insane amount of variety with battle themes. So many different enemies and enemy types have different battle themes. So yeah, like that's kind of like one of the big treats of the game is how different everything is. Now, this leads into the combat, which is the most uninteresting aspect of this game. It has a turn-based combat system, and the only two unique things about it are, one, there's the rhythm groove thing, and this is why there's so many different battle themes, is that when you do a normal attack, you can do a combo if you rhythmically time the button presses to the beat of the song, and you can get up to a 16-hit combo on any enemy with every character in your party. And that's actually kind of cool, but it doesn't have any visual indicators. You're just going strictly off rhythm and beat. The other one is that it has a sort of ticking HP bar. So like say an enemy hits you for 200 HP, right? Rather than you say, and you have 500, right? Rather than go from 500 to 300 immediately, it starts scrolling down, like an old gas, machine or something, and it's ticking down, and you can actually mitigate the loss of it by healing yourself before it's wound down the damage. So say you have 200 HP and someone hits you for 215 and you're going to die. If you mash through and get a heal spell out while your life is slowly ticking down, you can heal yourself and prevent yourself from dying, or another character in your party. That's actually the most fun thing or unique thing in the battle system, is how when damage is given and received, it's like a scaling integer, or it's just like a scaling, old school style gas pump. And it's funny how you can actually like prevent deaths in that way from it. Otherwise, it's just a very uninteresting battle system. It's just basic turn-based. It does like kind of like the first-person thing, like Phantasy Star Classic does, and some other classic RPGs do. And it's just not really interesting. It's not even visually interesting. There is a front and a back, so like if you sneak up on an enemy, you'll see a sprite for like an enemy turned around, which is kind of fun, but yeah. So that being said, like getting into the meat and potatoes, like what are some of the pros and cons? And the cons really of this game have mostly to do with sort of like the pacing and design in certain aspects, which are really weird. So the first half of the game, you play through different chapters with different characters, but you end up playing most of the first half of the game with one character, maybe two, but usually just one character. So you're going to have to go and fight groups of enemies, mob fights, a boss might have goon summons, and you have to face them with one character. You have no party ability whatsoever. And you like sometimes you get two, and then sometimes you'll have a couple, and then they go away really quickly. And the whole first half of this game is kind of like that. Well, I say a whole first half, but really just the first 4 of 8 chapters, because there is a later chapter. The 7th chapter is pretty much, that one chapter is as long as all the other chapters combined in the game, which is pretty crazy. But eventually you do get a full party system, with 4 people, and then it's not as much of a problem. But yeah, this is definitely one of those games where it very strangely kind of locks you into these single player fights through whole chapters and sections of the game, and it kind of makes like a sort of, feels like an artificial difficulty where it, at the beginning of the game shouldn't be as hard as it is, but it is because you're locked to one character. The other thing is that the story is very good. It's very heartfelt, but like there's the main characters. It feels like the main character's plot line, the family plot line, let's call it that, it's so super important at the beginning and the end of the game. And it kind of takes this weird backseat in the middle where it's like it's still acknowledged and it's still part of the overall grander plot of the whole game. But it to me, it almost felt like weird how emotional the ending of the game really is. And it is emotional. But it felt like, wow, I spent so much of this game concerned with other things, the greater overall narrative and the other characters and their plot points and motivations. And it's like when we finally circled back around to the beginning stuff, it's almost like, wow, I feel like I was gone so long from it. And it's not all, and the thing is, it's not actually that long of a game. Crit pathing it, and again, I full disclosure, I straight up cheated because I am sick and tired of turn-based battle systems. But like there's not it's not a super long game. You don't travel the globe. You kind of just move around this one kind of small-ish island that you live on throughout the course of the game. You kind of go around in off parts of it. But it still feels like you're going to new places each chapter, and sometimes many new places, say in the 7th chapter. But yeah, like you're going to new places, you're seeing new things. Like there is a nice feeling of I'm going on a journey still. I'm still doing things. But yeah, like it's kind of weird how one of its main plot points kind of almost takes a backseat to other plot points, and then they all wrap up, of course. And one of the things I want to say, I think the biggest triumph. So those are pretty much my cons for the game. The triumph, the pros, is this game is absolutely a game with a story, a strong story, strong narrative, but it has a message. It has a point. It is very. It feels like the author's like heart and soul is put onto the screen. I can't say the page, but like put on screen, put into every cartridge of this game. Like you feel his message. There's a strong I can't say this now. Author intent. There's the authorial feel to it. It feels like this game is absolutely speaking from the heart of its creator, Itoy-san. So I love that. And even if like the message to me doesn't quite, actually one of the most fascinating things about his message is that it's very culturally significant in a way that maybe that even might have had a part in maybe why this didn't get localized. Probably not. There's actually significantly big reasons. One being the copywritten music sampling. That's a huge issue. That's probably like not worth the money squeeze out of it. And then there is another that is an actual con that I forgot to mention that is a huge significant one. But yeah, like this is a game where you feel the message, but it's a very cultural focused message because it's very much about sort of the march and progress of time and how our pursuit of material things, our pursuit of technology, and how we're losing some of some of the best thing. We're losing some of our essence, losing a little bit of our soul even. But like very much how people are moving away from small, tight-knit community, rural countryside towns, and everyone moves towards the big city for this march of consumerism, march of capitalism, march of technology. Like you literally see it in the logo of the game and how it actually changes from beginning to end. So yeah, this game has a very strong message, and I'm not surprised because the creator of this game was the character reference model and the voice actor for the father in the film My Neighbor Totoro. So there you go. There's no surprise that some of the strong Ghibli theming rubbed off on him. He probably shared it his whole life too. So absolute triumph of that. And then also the game is heavy and heavy-handed and dark. It is quirky, yes, and there are moments and sections, whole swaths of this game that sometimes feel it's random as fuck for being random as fuck. It's quirky and non sequitur for the sake of being quirky and non sequitur. Sometimes it feels like that. Sometimes it feels a lot more poignant. But like at the end of the day, though, the overall narrative and story is very good. It's very touching and it feels very real and authentic. And I love that about the game. But there are things, though, again, that is sad. You do have to go through a fan translation mod to play this game in English. And one of the things is that, yes, this game has... I don't think there was malice behind its intent, but there is a whole portion and character, a lot of characters in this game called the Magypsies, and they are a very problematic, very outdated, I don't think it was ill intent, but it is hurtful representation of a marginalized community and minority, and there's really no getting around that. In fact, like even if you wanted to ignore the greater overall point of it, you still really can't overlook the scene where Lucas gets his psychic abilities, his magic abilities, how he gets it, how the scene plays out. It's meant to be done humorously, but it's quite disturbing, really. Like it's just, this would never fly, and frankly, it should never have flown in 2006. It doesn't make it right because this game is so old, nearly 20 years old. Doesn't make it okay for when it happened. It wasn't okay then. It's not okay now. But I do think that there is still a great story here to be told. There is still great things happening here, and I do think that a full remaster of this game in the future could very well be done, and I think you could still do it and not lose anything, especially not lose any authorial intent. I think a remaster where maybe if you had legitimate, people from either, in the cross-dressing or the trans community, actually completely rewrite and redesign the Magypsies, and you do that, and then you find a way to not use any licensed music samples, but like more original stuff or stuff that sounds close enough to it without treading that copyright line. I think you could easily get a very well done remaster that keeps the heart and point of this story completely intact, and hopefully something can be released to the world. Because I actually do hope this game does get a remaster or a remake of some sort someday. I know Toy's not really interested in that, and God bless him for that as well, because like I also feel like game series should end. I feel like his feelings on I told the stories I wanted to tell, I have nothing left to say regarding the Mother series, I applaud that. But I think just for the sake of some of the really problematic stuff in this game and some of the copyright music stuff and the fact that that's kind of locked this game out from the rest of the world, even though it is such a good, heartfelt story, I think it's kind of a shame. And I think if any game kind of deserves a remaster, it's this one. And I think we iron out those kinks, we fix those problems. And I think we have one of the best narrative Nintendo games, outside of Xenoblade, in their library, and deserves to be told. I love this. Like this again, this game doesn't shy away from anything, doesn't shy away from some of the heavy hitting stuff. Again, like people like for a game that is silly and irreverent, but also and goofy looking and simple and simplistic looking. It doesn't pull any punches. Like people die in this game, and people get fates worse than death. And people, and when I say people, I mean people who were like kids, even like they don't pull punches in this game. Early on in the game, you get some pretty heavy stuff. So I love that fact. I love that there was no shying away from that in this game, and I enjoyed my time with this game from a narrative standpoint for the most part, and the battle system was kind of whatever. I think a full, complete, redoing or just changing of the battle system in general would serve the game well. I think I think you could definitely put something more interesting in the game than what it has as far as the battle system goes. I'm sure it has its fans, but it's just, to me, it's not quite unique enough. And I'm not saying it needs to be real time or anything like that, but I think they could maybe add more sauce, maybe add more Mario and Luigi, Mario RPG elements to it, keep the rhythm stuff, but like add to it, add defensive mechanics too. I think it could be a little more saucy or a little more in depth. So that being said, it's a fantastic game, but it has pacing issues. It has serious pacing issues. It has serious like battle system issues with how long it kind of like makes you play through the game with one, maybe two characters for so long and just makes the game artificially difficulty inflated. And again, like it's weird how like one chapter introduces a bunch of MacGuffins and takes the entire length of the rest of the game all in one chapter. So the game length more or less doubles because of one chapter alone. It makes sense in the plot of the game. It's not like it doesn't come out of nowhere. It's just that, yeah, there's a sort of MacGuffin quest introduced at the end of the back half of the game, and that takes up as much time as the whole rest of the game combined. A little weird, and again, not every story beat hit as hard as it did because there is so much going on in this game, and sometimes, yeah, they just decided to give you exposition dumps. There's an insane long expedition dump at, like, near the end of the game in the final few hours, and yeah, there's things where, like, okay, this character's plot and motivation kind of like trailed off for a while. But yeah, like again, a few things they could and should fix here and there, and this would make a fantastic game to remaster, and I think it should, because it's almost kind of a shame how this is the one game that's kind of like lost to the globe from Nintendo, and it's one of their stronger narratives they've ever done. You know, I'm thankful this game exists. I'm thankful for the fan translation, and you know, my hat's off to all the people who put all the time and work and effort into translating this game. You're doing God's work out there. And as far as like Nintendo goes, like, yeah, this is ripe for a remake remaster. And you don't have to lose the art style or anything. You just kind of really need to rethink the problematic elements and rethink some pacing issues. And we have like an all-timer on our hands here. But yeah, overall, as it stands, this game, as you know, in this complete form, I would give it an 8.5. It's definitely one of the best original Game Boy Advance games. Definitely sits in the top 10 somewhere for games that were created specifically for the Game Boy Advance. And I absolutely enjoyed my time with it, and I'm glad I played it. I'm glad I got to experience it, and I'm glad I get all the references in Smash Brothers now. So that's what I think about Mother 3, and let me know what you guys think of Mother 3, and I will see you in the channel. Later, dudes.